All right. Hey, everybody, Clash of Cultures. We are back, continuing with our series of previewing college football teams. So today we're going to do the defending back-to-back national champion Georgia Bulldogs. So the first thing you got to say about Georgia, man, they've just, especially as it comes to 2023, they've lost so much between the last 2 years. We know all the picks, and I'm sure we'll talk about it. So it's really obviously they're going to be given the number one position deservedly. But the question is, can they survive all this attrition that they've really had over the last 2 years with a bunch of players that are now in the NFL? Now that defense from 2 years ago is basically gone, what is Georgia going to be like in 2023? So what's up, Steven?
Well, just to kind of give my little 2 cents on like what they've lost. Obviously, they lost like 5 or 6 guys in the draft.
Yeah.
Notable guys: Carter, obviously, Smith, Ringo, and a few other dudes. They did bring back McConkey, Bowers, obviously, who I think is the best tight end in college football.
Yeah, I
Um,
think
they
that's
they
not
yeah
debated.
they brought back Kendall Milton. He was a pretty good back. But I think the story is going to be Carson Beck, obviously, the
Yes.
quarterback. He didn't play much last year. They don't have Bennett anymore, who was there for however long he was there for. It feels like forever.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think as we talked about Ohio State in 2 videos ago, I don't think, personally, I don't think Georgia is going to be a team that has the talent on offense that you can just plug and play a quarterback in and they would be successful. Now, they might have a top three defense still, but I think it's going to be very similar to the whole Clemson situation where the defense is really good, but the offense is going to struggle. Because, I mean, even you saw last year with Bennett, the offense struggled, especially against,
Yeah.
I think it was against Missouri in that game. So their offense looked pretty bad throughout the year. I mean, obviously they showed up when it mattered in the playoffs, but there was a lot of times where their offense looked really bad as well. So, I mean, I think losing those 5, 6 players on defense, they can retool that, and that shouldn't be a problem. But when it comes to the offense, I think losing Bennett, and having to plug in a 4-star guy who hasn't really played any meaningful football is going to be hard for them. They lost their offensive coordinator too. I'm pretty sure he went to the Ravens,
Yeah.
and they brought back I forget the guy's name. Do you know his name?
So, but you talking about the offensive? I don't know who the offensive coordinator is this year.
Whoever it is, he was a coach there for like 8 years before, like in the early late 2000s.
Hmm.
I think his name is Bobo or something like that.
Oh yeah, I don't know
Yeah,
Bobo.
yeah, I think it's Michael Bobo or something like that. But they brought him back. He was on the staff last year, but he wasn't like a coach. He was like one of those like assistant guys. So he's going to be the offensive coordinator now. So I think he has a tall task to work with, given that he doesn't really have. I mean, they have playmakers, but we just don't know them yet. So I mean, I
Right.
could be wrong, but I think this is going to be one of those years where they aren't like the runaway favorite because I mean in that division because you have Tennessee who is going to be really good this year. So I mean I think obviously it's going to come down to one of those two teams, and I think Tennessee might be a little bit better than Georgia this year.
Yeah, I think what you're going to see from Georgia is a power running attack. They are bringing back two very good running backs, both of them over 500 yards last year, in Kendall Milton and Edwards. So I think you're going to see a two-headed monster there. I think even last year they didn't have anybody who was ridiculously scary at wide receiver. And I mean, outside of Bowers, obviously Bowers is a monster tight end, but from the wide receiver spot, they didn't have anybody that I think really scared defenses. And I think that's going to be the same kind of answer this year. Is going to be this power running attack. You're going to have Bowers, who's a mismatch from the tight end position, and then you just kind of spray the ball around with the wide receivers. Bowers had 900 plus yards, but everybody else was 700 or lower last year. Um, and they have McConkey, I think that's how you say his name, coming back. He was their leading receiver from the wide receiver position, again excluding Bowers. But like I said, I don't think there's a lot of star power there. I think Stetson Bennett kept them in a lot of games that maybe they shouldn't have been in, especially offensively. And then they rode that defense. They rode the running backs, and then they rode that defense. And again, we can talk about what they've lost on defense, and even from last year, like we talked about Jalen Carter, On offense, they lost Broderick Jones. They lost Nolan Smith, as we know. They lost Tyreek Stevenson. And we can keep going down this list, especially, like I said, if you say over the last 2 years, they are really kind of retooling uh, a whole new defense. Now, Georgia recruits defense well. So there's a bunch of names, kind of like Steven said. There's a bunch of names that are probably going to be great players that we
Yeah.
just don't know right now, that we don't know who they are. Again, I don't count Georgia out. I think I said the same thing last year. I thought they lost too much. I'm not going to count them out again this year. I think Kirby Smart, especially defensively, just has a great thing going. And there's going to be stars that we just don't know about yet.
Yeah, so just a little bit of the notes that I did take down for Georgia. I knew that they recruited well, but just for everybody that's watching this video, I just want to give perspective on how good they've recruited the last like almost decade. So since the recruiting class of 2017, they've had a top four class every year since 2017. In 2017, they had the third best class. 2018, they had the first. 2019, they had the second. 2020, they had the first. 2021, they had the fourth. 22, third. This year, they had the second ranked class. And what's even more surprising to me, well, not really surprising, but a more of an eye opener is the 2024 class. They're currently in first place of that class,
Yep.
and the 2025 class, they're in first place for that class. So, I mean, I think even though they did lose a lot this year, or I guess you say from last year, I don't. They are not my favorite to win the championship.
Yeah.
Now they have a cupcake schedule. They play UT Martin, Ball State, and UAB out of conference. They're going to beat every one of those teams probably by 50. None of those teams are even
Do you
Power
have
Five
the
teams.
schedule?
Yeah, I got you right now. None of those teams are even Power Five teams. So I don't think. Let me click this 1 second.
So, and I mean, that's the part we got to talk about, right? The SEC East is obviously down, especially as you compare it to the SEC West. You have a two-headed race there. There are only two teams that I think are going to make any noise: Tennessee and Georgia. Obviously, Florida is way down and probably a couple years away from competing. Uh, Kentucky was down last year with Levis. They're probably going to be down again this year. So it's really whatever happens in that I'm sorry, Tennessee game, that's going to determine the SEC East. And
Yeah,
then what's
and
their out of conference games?
UT
Really nobody.
Martin, Ball State, and UAB. So I mean, I think they're either going to go 12-0 or they're going to go 11-1. The Tennessee game is going to be the only deciding game.
Yeah.
I don't see any trap games for them. Even Georgia
You could
Tech.
say Ole Miss. I mean, we'll see what Ole Miss is. I mean,
Maybe
that
South
could be a
Carolina,
team
but
that could beat them.
yeah, I mean, it just depends. I think, but the story for this team is going to be even if they don't win the championship, I don't really think it's going to be a big surprise because I mean, the one of the last two they just
Yeah.
signed Dylan Raiola, so I mean, the future is going to be bright for them. I would say the next season, either next year or the year after that, they're probably going to be the favorites again. But as of right now, they're probably not my favorite to win it. I would still probably favor Tennessee and Alabama in the SEC over them. And obviously, we'll talk about both those teams in the next couple of weeks or whenever we get to them. But that's, I mean, kind of way that I would say it. And also, when it does come to recruiting, they got Raiola. I think he's the number one overall player in next
Coming,
year's
yeah,
draft.
next year.
They got the number 4 overall player in the draft in Ellis Robinson. He's a corner.
Not in the draft. You
I'm sorry, not the draft. In recruiting. I don't know why I said that. And then there's also the number 3 player in recruiting. His name is Mike Matthews. The only reason why I'm familiar with him is because Clemson's trying to get him. He's an athlete slash wide receiver out of Georgia, and I think he goes to Parkview or something like that, some high school in Parkview, and he plays for the Tigers, and it literally looks exactly like Clemson. So that's the only reason why I know that is. I always see it on Instagram. But I think his top 3 are Georgia, Clemson, and Alabama. I don't know when he's going to commit. But obviously, I hope we get him. But if he goes to Georgia, that means they're going to have 3 of the top 4 players in this class in next year's class, which is obviously going to be insane. But my overall, I guess, prediction or preview for this team would be, I wouldn't be surprised if they made the championship and won the championship. But I probably don't favor them. If I had to bet money, I wouldn't bet on them. I think they're going to finish 12-0 or 11-1, and then ultimately play against Alabama in the SEC championship game. But they're going to finish obviously like top 6, top 7, just based off their schedule. Now, I think if they were to end up playing a team like Notre Dame, like Ohio State and Clemson are, or even a team like Oregon, or just another Power 5 team that's respectable, I think we could say we'd be able to kind of judge them a little bit better. But because they're playing a bunch of high school teams, I don't think we can really say definitively that they're going to be who we think they're going to be at week 4 or 5. Let's say they are 5-0. They've beaten three teams that aren't even Power 5, so it's going to be kind of hard to judge them.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think the good thing for them, especially as you look at kind of how they open up, they don't have really a team with a pulse until I guess you say South Carolina in week 3. That lets Beck kind of get comfortable as a quarterback. Again, 4 or 5 star guy, but it's a matter of him understanding and playing college football against other college football players in live action. So yeah, I agree with you 100%. I think between the Auburn, Ole Miss, and Tennessee game, they will drop one of those. I have them going 11-1. I have them probably coming out of the SEC East, and we'll talk about the rest of the SEC as we talk about some of these other teams. But I don't have them in the playoffs. I don't have them winning the SEC. I think Alabama just has a little bit more talent. Again, it's hard to knock Georgia, the back-to-back champion. I think they should start the season as the preseason number 1. But like I said, I think they've just lost so much talent. And it's hard to replenish that quickly. Like Steven said, I suspect they're going to bounce back rather quickly, whether that be the next year or the year after. But I think this year you're going to see where that depletion of talent really kind of comes back to bite them.
And really quick, before we end this video, I noticed something, and I don't know if this is like this for every team, but why do they have 7 home games? And not only do they have 7 home games, but the 8th is at the Falcon Stadium, which is damn near a home game.
Yeah, and that's the tough part in the SEC championship. So you think about it. Last year they played the SEC championship in Atlanta. Then they played their first playoff game in Atlanta.
Wait, so
what? So that Ohio State game was also in Atlanta.
Wait, no, so they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes, they have 7 home games and 5 away games.
Yeah, I'm not sure how that works or what the rules are for SEC.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, that's weird to me.
Well, are all their out of conference games at home?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's probably why.
Well, and also, I mean, they would never go to UT Martin, Ball State, or UAB.
Well, and that's what I'm saying. Most teams, their out of conference game, they'll have like home and homes. So you know what I'm saying? Like they'll play, like Georgia is not playing anybody in their out of conference. Normally, like they've played Clemson before. Yeah. And they do the little neutral site, even though the game's in Georgia.
Yeah, like the Ohio State Notre Dame one.
Right. So that's a home and home. But yeah, so because they're not doing that this year, they don't have a legitimate home and home out of conference. That's probably why you see them with 7 home games.